had always been drawn to the unknown, her heart haunted by dreams of unraveling secrets hidden deep within forgotten lands. And nothing could have prepared her for the sinister allure of the village veiled by perpetual mist. As she stepped off her worn-out bus on the deserted cobblestone lane, the fog welcomed her like an ancient ritual, wrapping her in a chill that resonated with memories of lost time. Every sound, from the creaking of old wooden signs to the soft whispers carried by the wind, wove a tapestry of eerie anticipation and quiet despair. Even the twilight seemed reluctant to reveal its light, leaving Kaori to confront a world that spoke in the language of shadows and whispered promises of forgotten sorrows. The village, suspended in an enigmatic twilight under the perpetual cloak of mist, appeared as if it were caught between two realms, the living and the echo of memories that refused to fade away. With each tentative step, Kaori felt herself navigating not only a labyrinth of narrow alleys and decrepit cottages, but also the twisted corridors of her own troubled past. The ivy that clung to every ancient structure seemed to pulse with stories of hope and despair, and the murmur of voices, both near and distant, hinted at secrets of a generational curse. Among these silent relics, the very air breathed a lament of misery and unspoken torment. Wandering through the village, Kaori discovered remnants of a life that had once pulsed with vibrancy, but now lay dormant beneath layers of accumulated sorrow and decay. Faded inscriptions on weathered walls told tales of rituals once intended to summon prosperity, but had instead beckoned relentless calamities. It was as if the mist itself had borne witness to the cursed ceremony that irrevocably altered the destinies of all who had ever dwelled here. The spectral inhabitants of this sorrowful refuge were bound to an ancient promise, a pact sealed with whispered words that echoed across time and space, leaving Kaori both fascinated and terrified by the tangible weight of history. As the day surrendered to night, Kaori's senses were assaulted by a cacophony of fleeting illusions and murmurings emanating from the ethereal fog. She found herself drawn towards fragmented diaries left behind by long-forgotten souls, a testament to the pain and longing of the villagers. Each carefully penned word on the fragile pages carried an almost palpable anguish, whispering of rituals whose outcomes had twisted the fates of those who sought its power. With trembling hands, Kaori absorbed the sorrowful confessions, realizing that the mist was not merely a natural phenomenon, but a living, breathing entity, holding the spectral remnants of agony within its infinite embrace. The lingering fog seemed to have a mind of its own, advancing and receding with a deliberate slowness that mirrored the rhythm of a heavy heart. In the silence of that eerie domain, Kaori began to recognize patterns, a persistent cold spot, fleeting glimpses of figures in the corner of her vision, and mournful echoes reverberating throughout the deserted lanes. These subtle signs were not random. They coalesced into a narrative that hinted at a collective memory, a sorrowful lament of those who had been ensnared by the curse. The whispers of ancient voices grew louder as she made her way deeper into the village, urging her to unravel the mystery of a ritual that had forever altered the course of destiny. Each step Kaori took was an invitation to explore the village's darker corners, where history and myth intertwined to form a tapestry of unfathomable grief and defiant hope. The once vibrant cottages now stood as silent mausoleums, their wooden facades scarred by time and the weight of hidden laments. As she roamed through what seemed an endless corridor of sorrow, the spectral figures of past generations appeared, fleeting yet unmistakable, as if to remind her that the villagers were still very much alive in the realm of memory. Their mournful presence lingered, like a haunting refrain that resonated across the abandoned streets. Under the watchful gaze of an encroaching night sky, Kaori sought shelter within the ruins of an old manor that had once belonged to a renowned herbalist. Now, its dilapidated walls and vacant windows served as monuments to the passage of time and despair. Inside, the remnants of a former life lay scattered among dust and debris. Old photographs, fragmented letters, and brittle books that chronicled the rise and fall of the village. Each artifact was a silent witness to the tumultuous events that had culminated in the fateful pact with an otherworldly force. A tale marked by hope, twisted into unending grief. In the quiet solitude of that ruined refuge, Kaori began to piece together the tragic history of the village, reading account after account of desperate measures taken in a bid to wrest control from the forces lurking within the mist. The residents had once attempted to commune with benevolent spirits, hoping to secure a future free from want and despair. But instead, they had inadvertently summoned an ancient presence that sought dominion over mortal souls. With a heavy heart, Kaori realized that the village's fate was sealed by an inadvertent bargain won, where prosperity was traded for a legacy of perpetual torment. And the mist itself became the custodian of the curse. Late into the night, as Kaori ventured back into the labyrinthine alleys, the fog thickened to an almost impenetrable barrier. Each gust of wind carried with it mournful voices that seemed to lament their lost chance at redemption. It was during these moments that Kaori encountered fleeting glimpses of spectral figures, transparent silhouettes, moving with an air of quiet desperation, as if each spirit carried the weight of unfulfilled promises. The eerie calm of the village was punctuated by these moments of supernatural manifestation, leaving her both entranced and deeply unsettled by the realization that she was not alone in her search for truth. In the dim glow of what little light the night offered, the village's past began to coalesce into a mosaic of tragic events that spanned generations. Kaori found solace in the whispered narratives of those long gone, despite the overwhelming sadness that threatened to consume her. The mist, ever present and alive, shifted slowly around her, as if guiding her steps toward places where the veil between reality and myth grew perilously thin. Each rustle of the overgrown foliage and each distant cry echoed the lost voices of a community still seeking redemption, urging Kaori to confront the harrowing legacy enshrouded in darkness. The deeper Kaori delved into the mysteries of the haunted hamlet, the stronger the pull became of the spectral forces that governed its existence. She recalled tales of the ritual, a desperate attempt by the villagers to secure a bountiful future, only to be ensnared in a web of supernatural consequences. Fragmented inscriptions in forgotten diaries hinted at a blessing turned curse, a binding agreement sealed in anguish and regret. As Kaori read these tormented chronicles by the flickering light of a salvaged candle, she felt an undeniable connection to the suffering souls whose stories were etched into every creaking brick and every murmuring gust of wind. With the days melding into nights, Kaori's journey took her further along pathways that led not only into the heart of the village, but also into the depths of her own buried memories and fears. The mist acted as a living mirror, reflecting back not just the disintegrated remnants of a once thriving community, but also the silent phantoms of her past. a past filled with moments of unresolved sorrow and quiet longing. In these moments of reflection, Kaori began to understand that her presence in the village was no mere coincidence, but perhaps an inevitable collision between her own buried pain and the village's centuries-old curse. Every narrow lane in the village seemed to have a voice, a melancholic murmur that carried long-forgotten secrets within its echo. As Kaori walked, she became increasingly aware of an ancient rhythm that pulsed through the cobblestones, a heartbeat of despair that resonated with the sorrowful pulse of the earth itself. There was a hypnotic quality to the murmurs, a cadence that drew her deeper into the web of memories and tragedies that had defined the lives of those who had once sought solace within these walls. The village, with its decrepit structures and evasive shadows, was a living monument to misery and lost hope. One cold and unyielding night, Kaori's restless explorations led her to the outskirts of the village, where the dense forest began to reclaim man-made boundaries. The ancient trees, bereft of leaves and adorned with gnarled branches, reached out like spectral hands, begging for release from their eternal vigil. Along a narrow, scarcely trodden path, she discovered a clearing that exuded a profound sense of foreboding. In the heart of the clearing lay a forgotten stone altar, worn smooth by the passage of time and untouched by the ravages of nature. A remnant of the once forbidden ceremony that had doomed the village to its cursed fate. Standing before the weathered altar, Kaori felt an inexplicable pull, a magnetic force drawing her towards its silent testimony of despair and penance. The altar bore intricate carvings that depicted moments of silent torment and subdued hope, each etching a cryptic reminder of the misguided attempt to harness forces beyond mortal comprehension. As the mist swirled around her, the setting transformed into a theatre of spectral echoes, a stage where the lament of the cursed souls played out in hushed, sorrowful movements. In that suspended moment, Kaori contemplated the possibility that her own destiny might be intertwined with the ancient misery that this place had harbored for generations. With the altar etched indelibly in her memory, Kaori resumed her journey deeper into the heart of the cursed village, where every turn promised revelations, both terrifying and tragically beautiful. The farther she ventured, the more palpable the presence of those unseen forces became. A spectral chorus that chanted softly from every hidden crevice and overgrown doorway. The oppressive weight of history bore down upon her, each step a reminder that the village was a repository of countless untold stories of sorrow and regret. Kaori could almost sense the longing of souls yearning for an escape from the eternal night, a desire that resonated with her own search for closure. Each encounter in the village seemed to echo a singular truth. The events that had unfolded here were not isolated episodes of a forgotten time, but rather the culmination of a collective destiny bound by both hope and despair. As Kaori absorbed the stories whispered by the wind, she began to see patterns in the chaos, a tapestry of suffering interwoven with threads of reluctant redemption. In every silent corner and every echoing footstep, the presence of the cursed past was unmistakable. It was as if the very air was charged with the residual energy of a pact made long ago. A reminder that some secrets, no matter how deeply buried, continue to demand reckoning. In the midst of this turbulent journey, Kaori found solace in the spectral echoes of the ancestors' ghosts of hope intertwined with shadows of melancholy, whose silent laments bore testimony to the village's forgotten glory. She spent long hours in the quiet corners of abandoned structures, poring over yellowed manuscripts and cryptic sketches that captured the essence of a civilization now lost beneath the weight of its own regret. Slowly, the narrative of the village unfolded like a tragic ballad, a melody of despair and yearning that resonated with the pulse of the earth. Even in solitude, Kaori felt accompanied by the collective heartbeat of all those who had been ensnared by the curse. As days blurred into nights, the spectral figures grew bolder, emerging from the swirling mist with an almost desperate urgency, each seeking to reclaim a piece of their lost humanity through fleeting touches of remembrance. Kaori, though initially overwhelmed by the intensity of these encounters, gradually learned to read the signs etched within the subtleties of their movements. Their silent expressions told tales of love lost, promises unfulfilled, and a longing for a peace that had never truly been theirs. Each apparition, manifesting for mere moments before dissolving back into the dense fog, left an indelible impression on Kaori's soul, an impression that chronicled the sorrow of broken dreams and the resilience that lingered even in the depths of despair. The relentless mist carried with it the weight of 1,000 regrets, its ephemeral tendrils weaving through the fabric of the village like threads of an unwritten legend. Kaori's every step was now infused with a poignant blend of sorrow and hope, a determination to reclaim the secrets of a people long entrapped by misfortune. With the village itself as a character in her unfolding saga, she approached each ruined structure and desolate pathway as if it were a sacred relic of lives that still echoed in the present. The very atmosphere vibrated with the melancholy of the past. A past that whispered of rituals steeped in earnest yet misguided ambition, leaving behind a legacy of haunted echoes in the fog-laden air. With an almost imperceptible shift in the cadence of the wind, Kaori sensed that the village was drawing her toward the center of its sorrow, where the remnants of the ancient ritual lay shrouded in deeper layers of mystery. Beneath the weight of centuries-old laments, the path before her twisted and coiled through stands of ancient trees and decrepit stone bridges, each step punctuating the relentless passage of time. Here, in a secluded grove where nature reigned supreme, she discovered subtle markers, a series of worn symbols etched into the bark of a venerable oak that pointed to a forgotten meeting place of those fated by the cursed pact. It was as though the grove itself guarded the silent confessions of a community, urging her to uncover the truth hidden beneath layers of sorrow. At the heart of the mist-shrouded grove, where silence reigned as supreme, and every rustle spoke of ages past, Kaori encountered a natural amphitheater, carved out by gnarled roots and ancient stones. This secluded clearing felt imbued with a sanctity born of both reverence and regret, as if it were where the village's ancestors had once gathered to confront forces beyond their control. Here, the residual energy of the ancient ritual lingered, subtle yet unmistakable, a reminder of a time when hopes were high and destinies were irrevocably tied to the supernatural. In the dim light of the encroaching dusk, Kaori was struck by the realization that the nature of this curse was as much about human frailty as it was about the unyielding, enigmatic power of the mist. As Kaori lingered in the hallowed clearing, the interplay of shadow and light deepened her sense of isolation and introspection. The mournful cadence of the wind meshed with her inner turmoil, drawing forth memories of personal loss and regret. The echoes of the past, enshrined in the silence of ancient oaks and the murmurs of a long-forgotten congregation, beckoned her to surrender to the overwhelming despair that clung to the village. Yet within that torment was a paradoxical, puller belief that perhaps healing lay in confronting these haunted truths. As she sat before the silent altar, the deep resonance of ancient words seemed to stir within her, blurring the line between her own aching heart and the sorrowful spirit of the place. Driven by an inner compulsion, Kaori set forth on a quest to decipher the riddles left behind in the scattered remnants of the village. Each faded inscription and carefully concealed symbol was a fragment of a puzzle that, once assembled, might reveal the origins of the ill-fated ritual and the means to break the curse. The relentless pursuit of these cryptic clues became a journey not only of discovery, but also of deep emotional catharsis. With every revelation, Kaori experienced a profound shift, a merging of her personal grief with the collective agony of those who had been ensnared in the cursed tapestry. Her heart swelled with a mix of determination and melancholic acceptance, as if the answer lay hidden within the very fibers of this sorrowful existence. In the midst of this exploration, Kaori began encountering remnants of community life, frozen in time. A discarded trinket in a dusty alley, the faint outline of a once vibrant mural on a crumbling wall, the echo of a lullaby carried by the wind. These artifacts served as ephemeral testaments to lives that had once brimmed with hopes and dreams. They silently pleaded for remembrance, urging her to acknowledge the human stories woven into the fabric of the village's tragic destiny. The more Kaori uncovered, the more she recognized that her journey was as much about restoring the dignity of lost souls as it was about freeing herself from the shadows that haunted her past. Every relic resonated with the bittersweet echoes of a past, where love and loss danced in equal measure beneath the never-ending mist. As the mist thickened, a subtle metamorphosis took place in the village, a shift that was sensed more than seen, manifesting in the quiet gestures of nature and the solemn cadence of the wind. Kaori noted that even the decrepit walls seemed to breathe, exhaling whispers of a lament and anticipation. Shadows lengthened in a slow, deliberate march across the cobblestones, as if time itself were marking the progression of an inevitable reckoning. Amidst this slow evolution, Kaori's resolve hardened. Each spectral visitation, each mournful murmur from the darkness of the fog, served as a reminder that the path to redemption was paved with suffering, yet it held the promise of unlocking mysteries that had long eluded the living. The days grew increasingly surreal, marked by an eerie blend of natural beauty and supernatural disquiet. As Kaori roamed further into the inner sanctum of the village's tragedy, she discovered a crumbling chapel, where the echoes of hymns long past reverberated softly against stained glass fragments and broken pews. This sacred yet forsaken space was filled with the residual aura of faith turned to despair, a place where prayers had once ascended in hope, only to be swallowed by the relentless fog. The chapel's silence was profound, yet it was alive with the energy of the devoted, their sorrow etched into every worn stone and every quiet tear of remembrance. For Kaori, it was a poignant intersection of human aberration and the inexorable pull of a cursed fate. Night after night, the spectral manifestations grew more intricate, their appearances threaded with an almost desperate longing to communicate their tragic tale. Kaori began to decipher their silent language, a story told not in words, but in fleeting gestures and ephemeral expressions. In these interactions, she discerned a pattern, The apparitions were reenacting ritualistic movements, a somber dance that encapsulated both devotion and despair. Their collective sorrow was palpable, and as Clara observed them, a profound empathy stirred within her. She began to see these ghostly figures not as mere harbingers of doom, but as souls yearning for liberation from the burden of a centuries-old curse. Their every motion a silent testimony to the intertwined fate of the living and the spectral. As the convergence of supernatural energies became undeniable, Kaori set her focus on the legends that spoke of a final decisive act, an ancient ceremony that had the potential to either liberate the village from its curse or plunge it ever deeper into despair. Venturing into the darkest recesses of the forest bordering the village, she discovered obscure markers carved into rugged stones along a hidden pathway. These markers recounted the ritualistic rites performed by the villagers, each symbol a fragment of a larger tragic puzzle. With the fog swirling in mysterious patterns overhead, Kaori felt a mixture of trepidation and resolve, sensing that the culmination of her quest lay in confronting the very heart of this ancient, sorrowful mystery. Under a sky shrouded by an unyielding curtain of mist, Kaori finally arrived at the cryptic ritual site, an isolated clearing deep within the forest, where the energy of the past pulsed vividly in the ambient silence. The site was marked by a circle of time-worn stones, each standing as a solemn sentinel over the tragic events that had unfolded here. As she stepped into the circle, the atmosphere grew palpably denser, charged with the collective grief and longing of a countless lost souls. In that charged moment, Kaori understood that the ritual had been an irrevocable act of desperation, a final misguided plea to alter destiny that had instead sown the seeds of eternal sorrow, binding the village to an unbreakable cycle of regret. With the ancient stone circle as her only witness, Kaori began the arduous process of deciphering the esoteric symbols and cryptic instructions etched deeply into each weathered surface. The inscriptions, written in a long-forgotten tongue, resonated with an inscrutable wisdom that transcended the boundaries of time. As she traced her fingers along the grooves, each stroke seemed to awaken the presence of those who had come before, echoes of pleading voices that merged with the rustle of leaves in the dense surrounding forest. In that moment, it became clear that the ritual's true power lay not only in its intended purpose, but also in its unintended consequence, the binding of life and memory to a relentless, mist-shrouded fate. The deeper Kaori ventured into the labyrinth of ancient lore, the more she became aware of the thin veil separating the realms of the living and the spectral. Each page of a fragmented diary, every faded inscription on a decrepit wall, summoned images of desperate faces and forlorn eyes that pleaded silently for their stories to be remembered. The curse that had settled upon the village was a tapestry woven with the threads of personal tragedies and collective loss, a legacy that transcended the boundaries of mortal existence. In her solitude, driven by a determination born of personal grief and unrelenting curiosity, Kaori found herself slowly becoming a part of that tapestry, a reluctant keeper of the village's sorrowful legacy. As days merged into endless nights, Kaori's quest transcended the mere act of discovery. It became a pilgrimage into the very heart of despair and hope, a quest to unearth the transformative power of acknowledgement and forgiveness. In the dim glow of candlelight within an abandoned study, she meticulously pieced together narratives from scattered manuscripts each chronicle a mirror reflecting the unspoken agony of lives lost to misplaced aspirations. The ritual, though cloaked in layers of enigmatic mysticism, revealed itself as both a harbinger of doom and a potential path to redemption. As Kaori read the heartfelt words of those who had come before her, a glimmer of resolve began to kindle within her, a determination to confront the forces that had ensnared the village in an eternal dance of sorrow. Now, at the crossroads of destiny, Kaori felt the heavy burden of the choice that lay before her, one that promised to either sever the cursed ties of the past or to immerse her further into the vortex of despair. The perpetual mist that shrouded the village was more than a spectral veil. It was a manifestation of ancient grief, a living testament to regrets that transcended time. Standing before the circle of solemn stones in the silent clearing, she sensed that the culmination of all her painstaking discoveries rested on this juncture. The ambient silence was filled with the unspoken pleas of lost souls, urging her to either risk her own liberation for the sake of the whole, or to remain forever entwined in the cycle of sorrow and regret that defined the village's legacy. In the moments that followed, Kaori prepared herself for an act that was as much an internal exorcism as it was a confrontation with the supernatural. She gathered the esoteric artifacts and fragments of ancient lore, each resonating with the sorrow of those who had been bound by the old pact. With her heart pounding in an almost tangible rhythm, Kaori stepped into the center of the stone circle, where the charged energy of the cursed ritual beckoned her with both promise and warning. The silence was profound, broken only by the gentle murmur of the wind and the soft, desperate whispers of voices from long ago. Each heartbeat seemed to carry the weight of innumerable lives, urging her towards a decision that would forever alter the fragile balance between redemption and perpetual loss. In that fateful moment, as the mist coiled around her like spectral tendrils, Kaori initiated a carefully orchestrated invocation, a desperate plea to the unseen forces that had tormented the village for generations. The incantation, recited in a voice trembling with both sorrow and steely resolve, reverberated through the stillness of the clearing. The very air seemed to pause, absorbing the gravity of her words, as if the universe itself hesitated before determining the course of destiny. Within the circle, the symbols and ancient carvings lit up faintly, their subtle glow a silent testament to the enduring power of memories and the possibility of reconciliation with the past. As Kaori's voice echoed into the void, the spectral energy stirred, drawn to the raw emotion of her plea. The invocation set off a series of otherworldly phenomena, the gentle rustling of leaves, the whispering surge of fog, and the almost imperceptible hum of voices, all converging in a haunting symphony of lament and resolve. Kaori could feel the presence of countless souls, their grief mingling with the natural elements, as if the very fabric of existence was woven with despair and hope in equal measure. Each whispered syllable of her recitation broke through the stagnant silence, unraveling knots of ancient regret and birthing a fragile beam of potential redemption. The spectral assembly gathered around her, their ethereal figures merging into the mist, forming a communion of sorrow that was as haunting as it was beautiful. A poignant reminder that, even in the depths of despair, the faintest light of hope could kindle a path to liberation. In the eerie aftermath of the invocation, a profound stillness settled over the grove, as if the universe exhaled in acknowledgement of her bravery. The spectral figures slowly began to recede into the mist, their mournful faces softening into expressions of resignation and reluctant gratitude. Clara, standing in the center of the ancient circle, felt the overwhelming presence of the past recede like a tide, leaving behind echoes of what had been and hints of what might still be redeemed. The swirling mists seemed to part momentarily, revealing a glimpse of a forgotten dawn. A delicate promise that even the deepest curses might yield to the force of unyielding hope and compassion. As the spectral assembly faded, Kaori found herself enveloped in a profound silence that resonated with both loss and liberation. The clearing, marked by the ancient stone circle and shrouded in lingering mist, transformed into an emblem of all that had been sacrificed and all that could be redeemed. In that quiet aftermath, Kaori felt a deep connection with every soul whose grief had colored the history of the village, realizing that their stories would continue to echo through the corridors of time. With each soft, measured step, she carried their collective sorrow, a burden and a blessing, knowing that her journey was a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit and its capacity to seek redemption even in the face of unspeakable tragedy. In the final hours before the breaking of dawn, as the mists began to thin and the first hesitant rays of light touched the horizon, Kaori stood at the threshold between the cursed past and an uncertain future. The events of the night had etched themselves indelibly into her soul, a mosaic of sorrow, regret, and fragile hope that would forever shape her journey. The village, once enveloped in a relentless veil of dread, now whispered of a possibility of release, a faint promise that the cycle of despair might one day be broken. As the light slowly dispelled the lingering shadows, Kaori stepped forward with a heavy yet determined heart, guided by the memories and voices of those who had come before her, a living tribute to the silent struggle between fate and free will, and a reminder that even in the darkest realms of sorrow, there lies a glimmer of hope waiting to be rediscovered.